Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Post-Pandemic SaaS Sales, New Data on Buyer Preferences. My name is Sarah, and I'm on the content team here at Qwilr, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. Before we get too far, we have just a few housekeeping notes for you. First of all, we are recording this session, and we will send out a link after the webinar, should you wish to review any portion of this presentation again. You may submit your questions at any time during the presentation using your chat box. And if we don't get to your question during the live presentation, we'll follow up with you via email after the webinar. We also appreciate your feedback, and we have a brief survey when you exit the webinar. Today's presentation is brought to you by Qwilr. And for those of you unfamiliar with us, Qwilr is based in Sydney, Australia, and is a smart document system that makes it easy to create differentiated, visually compelling sales and marketing collateral at speed. And actually, this webinar deck was created as a Qwilr page. And if you see the URL at the top of my screen, you'll notice this is both a presentation and a web page. Okay, let's go ahead and meet our speakers for today. First off, we have Ben Lack, CEO and founder of Interrupt Media. Ben has worked 15 plus years in a digital marketing and demand gen capacity. He's also an investor, advisor, and consultant for companies of all sizes, ranging from small businesses to publicly traded companies. Ben specializes in helping marketing teams reach pipeline and revenue goals. We also have Chris Schreiber, who's the head of the marketing team here at Qwilr. He has 15 years of experience in leadership roles at high growth technology companies. Over the course of his career, Chris has built and led marketing teams for multiple growth stage software companies after beginning his career at Google. And there I am at the bottom if you're wondering what I look like. Okay, Chris, Ben, we're looking forward to what you have to share with us. Ben, would you like to give us some context around this topic and why we did the buyer experience study?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah, for the kind intro, and for all of you joining us. Thanks so much for being with us. We know your time is valuable and appreciate you spending some of it with us. As Sarah mentioned, I run a digital marketing agency, and we wanted to work with Chris and Sarah and their team to really understand more about the buyer process. I think what we can all agree upon is that a lot of times when we're going through some type of a SaaS sales process as the buyer, there can be a lot of friction to ultimately getting to the closed deal and having it done in a way to where we're all satisfied. And while there's certainly been some studies about that experience done, we really wanted to find out, basically, through COVID, how that's impacted the buying and sales process. As you can see here, pre-COVID, 61% of the sales process, was done in person, which is, the more traditional way that folks are used to a selling experience. But since we've all been in this new normal, video conference interactions have increased, over 40%, online chat has increased over 20%, 3/4 of buyers and sellers want some type of a new digital experience. And even Gartner has, studies and metrics out that's saying that more of the B2B sales experience is going to be digital transactions by 2025. So, with that as the framework, we said, let's do this SaaS buyer experience study to see what we can learn. And I think the three key findings that we got at a high level, and we'll drill down to these in a few moments, is number one, sellers really need to improve the buyer experience. And the question is, you're maybe asking yourself, is how? And it's really understanding your buyers better. Nothing novel, but there's certainly the devil's in the details. And to be able to provide personalized interactions to buyers and simplifying that purchasing process are the biggest takeaways that we've gotten from the study. So I'm going to take a quick step back and give you just a high-level overview of the study itself. We ended up surveying 116 folks that are very familiar and have participated in a software as a service buying experience. The company sizes ranged from small businesses all the way up to some of the largest companies in the world, and across a number of different industries as well. And so, because we wanted to get a pretty wide swath of folks and perspectives, as well as the different roles, anywhere from a manager level all the way to the C-suite, to really understand, kind of from those different views what this looked like. And at a high level, 79% of all of the buyers that we surveyed are frustrated by the purchasing experience. I think when Sarah and Chris and I saw this finding, we knew it was going to be high, but we didn't think that it would be as high as it actually was. And so when we drilled down into some of the additional questions, 35% felt that the buying experience was too complicated, and more specifically that there were way too many steps and that it just takes too long. And so, and that's 26% of those that were surveyed came up with that answer. So I think the question, really is what can you do? And if you keep scrolling down, what are some of the things that influence the SaaS buyer to purchase so that you can solve some of these pain points? And so the question that we asked was, which aspects of the software buying process influence whether or not you choose to purchase? We allowed folks to pick the top 3 influencing factors. Price was almost 50%, customer reviews was just over 40%, and a free trial of the product was, landed at 36%. When we asked for additional context about price, certainly the positioning of a SaaS tool is going to, dictate where price may sit and how you package it, and certainly the value that you're trying to give to the buyer. But we also found an interesting nuance, which is that being able for having a user or a buyer having the ability to basically configure what pricing could be on their own was something that was an interesting way to add value to the user, because traditionally buyers aren't as educated as they have been today. And I hope you'll agree that with the ability to get so much information that you can now on the internet and through other resources, buyers are just a lot more educated about the types of SaaS tools that they want to buy. And so certainly there can be, lots of scenarios where more education is the messaging and work that the seller needs to focus on. But what we found, through the survey and talking to survey respondents, is that really it's less of a conversation about education and more about empowering the buyer to be able to continue to kind of do their own investigation and research so that they can get to a purchase decision faster. So with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Chris and let Chris kind of share some additional insights and how that may translate to things that'll be useful for you as you think about how to do this yourself.
Thanks a lot, Ben, and thanks everyone for joining today. Essentially, we're going to take that sort of master chart of influences, and we've broke it down to sort of three buckets of insights where we want to sort of go a little deeper in the data, and then just give you some examples of what companies are doing today to try to actually execute on these strategies. So the first is the top result for influence for driving purchase decisions on SaaS was price, and it wasn't as simple as just exactly what it costs. It really, as we dug deeper, we found it's the ability to sort of build your own price as a buyer, to have a lot of control over the sort of configuring of what you're going to be buying. And so we found overall 2/3 of respondents either found it somewhat important or very important. The pricing could be a build your own model versus just being sort of given pre-created packages that they have to sort of choose to stick with or not. And so, to give you an example of what this actually looks like in the wild, we wanted to show you, an example of an interactive pricing table that you're starting to see more sales teams use. Sarah, why don't you walk through this?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I will say too, we have a lot of people asking more about who was surveyed and what industry and the roles. That is all mapped out in our buyer experience report that we produced, and we will share that link with you. So what we want you to take away today is kind of the overview of what we're learning and how these behaviors have changed. And what you're seeing on my screen here is a Qwilr build your own pricing model, or a quote block as we call it. And a build your own model is very, very similar to an e-commerce option that we're all used to when we're buying our favorite grocery items. And we all got very good at that, during COVID. We were given options of, how many apples do we want? And we could change that number and we could see the impact on our price. The same thing is true with software pricing, that if I were sent this Qwilr page or this proposal as a viewer, I could go in and I cannot adjust the price, but I can go in and here you can see 5 users. Well, maybe I don't want 5 users. Maybe I want 8. So I can change that and you can see off to the right, the price automatically adjusts. The same thing, I can go down here and I can see, oh, there's a optional analytics module and I can choose to have that. And maybe I don't want 5 users for that. Maybe I only need 2. So I can change that. And again, the price automatically updates. There's a CRM integration with API requests with a static cost. I can choose that. And then at the bottom, I can see an implementation fee, and I can see I've been given a 25% discount that's been applied to the price here. And at the very bottom, I can see that my price is $54,000. Now, as a buyer, maybe that is too much money. I'm over budget. So maybe I need to uncheck some things. So I unselect the CRM integration and now it's 44,000, which, okay, let's say that's now within my budget. I'm ready to go. And I've just saved myself a lot of back and forth with the sales reps to change options, to add things, to adjust the pricing to where it was I could afford it. And I put the buyer in control. So connecting back to our data, 35% of buyers said that the purchasing process has too many steps. We've now streamlined that process and we've removed a lot of back and forth negotiations and emails. When I think about the MarTech landscape, and there's over 8,000 solutions on the market, it's obvious that it's a highly competitive landscape. So if the buyer is deciding between 2 similar products, the one that makes it easier is likely the one who will win the deal. So ease of purchase is definitely a competitive advantage. And this build your own model removes the friction in the process, especially for motivated buyers. Now let's take a look at the impact, real world impact here. For this use case example, we have Destined, who is a Salesforce Platinum partner. They actually signed on to Qwilr for a couple of different reasons, but they found that the quote block was a hidden gem for them. It not only made it easier for customers to sign on by removing the back and forth of contract negotiations, but it actually increased their average contract size. As customers could see the options, they could select the projects they want to do now and which ones to do down the road. So all in, their sales cycles have been shortened and streamlined, and their deal sizes have increased. Definitely a win for them and for the customer. Chris, you want to tell us about buyer insight number 2?
Yeah, and so, this is obviously one that we're really interested in. It was just trying to dig a little deeper on, so where does content fit in? Where does collateral fit in? What can we learn around that area? So if you scroll down a little bit, personalization, you sort of constantly hear the word. You don't necessarily always hear a lot of data in terms of what does personalization really matter in terms of content and collateral. So this helps put some numbers to what has already sort of felt directionally correct, which is that personalization really is important to buyers when it comes to content and sales materials that are being sent. So about 2/3 of buyers said it's either somewhat or very important that materials that sales teams are sending to them are personalized to their specific needs. And then as we drilled in a little deeper in terms of specific influences and perspectives on types of content, so 42% said they would be influenced by customer reviews that they were sent or that they read. And then 1/3 said actually one of the positive influences would be just the variety of informational content that they're sent. So as we all know, people have different learning styles, and content is not just for the immediate buyer. Often you're sending content to a buyer who's then sending it on internally. So both of these are things that you want to consider in terms of you want to personalize your content. You want to think about how you can use customer reviews and case studies in the content you're sending over, as well as a variety of content that you're including as you send to your buyers. And so conversely, we try to dig into, so what are things that sales teams might do with content that could hurt the sale? And so, almost a third said materials that don't contain up-to-date information as the deal progresses. And I think, a lot of teams have felt this, that they are having a good conversation, they have their meetings, but then they're sending sort of outdated templates that don't reflect sort of latest conversation, and that can be very frustrating to buyers who've already sort of put in the time to say what they want, and now they're seeing an older version of content. And sort of another way of asking it was materials that are not personalized to me or different from other deals I've seen. So, keeping the materials sort of current with the sales conversation, I think has been sort of continually a theme that we've seen. Is it's important. It's not just one-off personalization where you put my name on it on top, but sort of throughout our sales cycle, keep the collateral in touch with the conversations that you're having. And so, just to hand it back to Sarah, a couple examples of how we see sales teams trying to do this in the wild.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I don't think anyone on this call today would argue about the value of personalization. I mean, of course it matters, but probably one of the biggest barriers to doing it is that it's very time consuming. So I wanted to show you a few examples of how you could integrate personal touches very simply within your proposals. And the first one is product videos. And I think we know how powerful a video can be, whether it is a product video or maybe it's a personal greeting, a Loom video that you've recorded. According to a study by Vidyard, 87% of salespeople are using video to engage, to qualify or influence deal. Again, whether it be a personal greeting or a product demo video. But the challenges are when you go to try to put that video into your PDF or your PowerPoint, it's going to be very challenging, either in how it displays or the file size, or maybe you're just providing a link and you've got to send them off to YouTube or Vimeo or Loom. It's not a good user experience. So again, you're looking at a actual Qwilr page and there's a video embedded. This is not just an image. I'm going to push play here. You'll hear a little bit of the video, but I'll start it a little quickly.
Introducing Qwilr. It's the best of.
So there you go. It will play right within the presentation. I don't have to link off to another site. It's right there, all contained, and there's no file size concerns because, of course, you're viewing a web page. Now let's look at another example. And this one I really like because this one is really speaks to the how do I save time in creating personalized proposals. So for this one, we're integrating your Qwilr proposal with your CRM because, of course, all the data lives within Salesforce or HubSpot, and sales reps usually have to manually pull in those data points, which again can be very time consuming. So here you can see that Qwilr is integrated, in this case, with HubSpot. And you can actually build your proposal from right within HubSpot or Salesforce, and then you merge in the customer data points to personalize it. You can email it to your client, and everything is documented all within your CRM. So it's super convenient. There's no going back and forth between platforms, and you've got a nice presentation. If we were to kind of isolate, okay, what's that data flow? Here you can see the fields that can automatically pull data from your CRM into your proposal with Qwilr. So contact data, deals, products, company properties. You can use tokens, or you can use, merge in those data points to further personalize your proposal. Okay, so let's take a look at the impact. For this use case example, we have Travel Bank. Travel Bank has been able to reduce the time spent on preparing proposals by 30%, which is pretty significant. Now, the reason they're saving so much time is by using the merged data fields from Salesforce, but they've also got a library of saved blocks that their sales team can pull into their proposal according to the conversations they're having. So they know, okay, we're talking about this product, I want this block, we're not talking about that, I'm going to remove this. And they can make their proposals very, very, very relevant and also more customized for that client. Their proposals are built programmatically versus manually, and there's the reason their sales team is can now spend more time selling versus creating their documents. In this process, Travel Bank has also solved one of their problems, which was picking up outdated information. I know that at my former company, we had a challenge with, pricing is updated all the time, and salespeople would sometimes go to that outdated pricing and pick up the wrong price. Now, with your proposal connected to your CRM where the pricing lives, you know that it's always going to be current. And so that's the case with Travel Bank, is they've eliminated those errors, and they now have that pricing data pulled in automatically from Salesforce. They've also reduced their software costs by 87%, because before Qwilr, they needed a separate content and contract management solution. And now they can consolidate and just use one. Okay, so let me show you what their sales proposals look like. I always think it's interesting to see what other people are doing. And I'm just showing you a few slides, and we have permission to share these with you. But this is the first page of a proposal, and this is for a financial institution. So you can see the content is personalized or customized according to their needs. So this particular client is very keen on expense details. So that's what they've got here on the home page. And then they also get into, okay, what would implementation look like, and the timeline for that. And then lastly, this is a block where they're trying to ease some of the customer anxieties, and they pulled in a testimonial from another financial institution. So it's all highly relevant, and it's also very visually appealing. So there's so much more to their proposals. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick glimpse into what they are doing and give you some ideas of how you can make your proposals more visual, how you can make them more tailored specifically to your customer and the conversations that you're having. So Chris, let's talk about the next buyer influence.
Great. And then, yeah, so this is our kind of final bucket of insights here. And this is really about, getting the deal done. And so what we found is overall sort of theme was buyers want a simpler process. And there's a number of conveniences that you can bring into that buyer process and buyer experience that can accelerate the deal. And so we want to sort of break down a few of those components. So, go back to some of the earlier data. The biggest result was on the build your own pricing. But actually what we found is a lot of things flow from that. In our experience with Qwilr, is if you can build your own pricing and get to a place that you're happy with, now you want to get things done. And oftentimes, just because you have a price quote, now there can still be a lot of steps involved in terms of like emailing over separate documents to sign, to pay, et cetera. And so, as you remember, over a quarter said that they just want fewer steps involved in completing the sale. And so we want to talk about what are some of those steps that might be able to remove. So a quarter saying they're annoyed by materials that cannot be easily received and shared. And so anyone that's had the experience of someone emailing them a large PowerPoint deck and trying to quickly see it on their phone, it is literally annoying. And it's also very hard to, digest it and share. So just taking off any potential that people just can't receive your content quickly and share it, that just helps reduce steps, reduce friction. Next piece though is, as you've sort of say you've configured pricing, you're happy with actually what you're going to be purchasing, over a quarter saying that I want a self-serve signing option. And so what we found is Qwilr is it's really like the magic is sort of combining the two, is being able to put the pricing together quickly, and then right underneath on the same page have the ability to sign that deal right there. And then even further down the funnel, 16%, but we think this may start to go up, is wanting the self-serve payment option. And so really, as we see it in Qwilr, is with Qwilr, a very sort of fluid buyer experience you can provide for those that are motivated, where they can configure their price, they can give you a signature and even sign off on the deal, all essentially in one flow that historically could have been many emails, many downloaded documents, and many opportunities to slow the deal, which is something no one wants on the sales side. And oftentimes buyers, when they're motivated and ready to go, now the emphasis is really on simplicity and moving fast. And so we just wanted to break down kind of what some of this stuff looks and feels like. And so I'm going to hand it back again to Sarah.
Yes, thanks, Chris. Okay, so let's take a look at an e-signature block. And, a lot of people are thinking this isn't anything new, and you're right. But when you integrate e-signature with your proposals, you're adding a ton of momentum, Chris, that like you talked about. You're getting that deal signed, you've made your pitch, you're getting that deal signed, you're removing unnecessary steps for motivated buyers. Now, in this example, you can see you can pre-program who you need to get signatures from and how many signatures you need to get. But the nice thing too is you can also set up a payment option. So whether that be a payment in full or you want a partial percentage up front, maybe as a deposit, however you do business, you're able to customize that for your customers. Okay, so let's look at the impact of this one. For this example, we looked at HR Collaborative. They have their proposals integrated with HubSpot. Like Travel Bank, they are using a library of saved blocks plus the e-signature option. And as a result, they've reduced their proposal to close time by 20%. And they no longer have to badger the prospect to sign or pass them off to finance for invoicing because it's all integrated and simplified. Destined, who we talked about earlier, the platinum partner for Salesforce, they also use the e-signature option, but in a slightly different application that I wanted to share with you. Now, they're not using it to invoice customers because the dollar amounts are very high. They need to go through that formal purchase order and invoicing process, but they will use the e-signature to get sign off when business requirements change. So if the customer wants to add something or change the scope of the project, they can do it very easily, and it's all legally documented. So as we talk through all of these things, what we're really talking about is process modification equates to bottom line influence. So the traditional way of selling, where you send a presentation, a proposal, a contract, an invoice, they're all separate documents. There's a lot of back and forth, emailing, re-emailing, and it gets cumbersome really for everyone involved. But when we modernize our selling process, we have greater impact. As we've shown you with Qwilr, the proposal and contract are now one. You can make updates to your conversations or as your conversations progress because it's a live web page. You also have more momentum connecting your pitch to the offer, and you've added in buyer convenience, which accelerate the entire process. So overall, it means less work for the buyer and for the seller. So Ben, we know you're still on the line, but why don't you talk us through what are the takeaways if you learn nothing else from our call today, then what do we want sellers to know?
So first is sellers need to improve the buyer experience. It's clear buyers are frustrated. And what we've found also from speaking to some of the surveyors was that, or responders actually, was that, the impact could be just a faster sales process. So if you're really thinking about velocity, it could really impact velocity if you build an experience like that, as well as closing deals faster at a higher percentage. So, ultimately at the end of the day, the way you're going to be able to do that is to build personalized materials. This is going to really require understanding who your buyer is so that you can personalize the content and materials in the right way, and then simplifying the process in the ways that, Chris and Sarah have just mentioned. The easier something is for the buyer, the less cumbersome, less hassle-free or hassle that somebody has to go through to get to the next step and ultimately getting the deal done is always going to put a better feeling in the buyer's mind with regards to kicking off, that new relationship. So any way to think about making things more convenient or removing friction, you're just going to be able to get that deal done faster and potentially even win more deals. So that's the big recap.
Great, thank you, Ben. Okay, Ben and Chris, this has been a good discussion. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. We have some questions coming in, but first of all, I want to encourage everyone on this webinar to take the next step. So you've heard a lot today. Now let's put it into action. We are offering a complimentary buyer experience consultation in which we'll talk through your current processes, review your collateral, and discuss ideas for improving your buyer experience. If you'd like to take advantage of this offer, email me, sarah.frazier, Frazier @Qwilr.com. Your post-event email will also have this information, but if you want to jumpstart, just jot down my email address while we're answering questions. Okay, let's get to the questions. First of all, Rob is asking, what was the biggest aha moment of this study?
Really, I think, and Chris, I'll go first. I think it was just how many people were frustrated with going through a SaaS buying experience. 80% seemed to be super high. I mean, I was expecting it to be certainly more than 50% because everybody's got different website experiences and online experiences that they're building through buying, SaaS software. But the fact that the number was that high really was interesting to me, at least.
Okay. Chris, did you want to add anything?
I mean, I think that's right on. I think, what we found is that I think the typical buying process is changing because there's so much more education and self-education that can happen now ahead of talking to a seller that often when buyers are coming in, they're ready to move fast. And your goal is to sort of close gaps and really enable them to proceed versus really trying to sort of start a whole sales process. And so we sort of just kept seeing examples of how sort of conveniences and efficiency and simplicity were kind of like the biggest results for kind of wherever we looked at, whether it was collateral, whether it was pricing or executing the deal.
Good, great. Okay, Casey is asking for more information on the build your own pricing model, how it impacts deal sizes. So Chris, I know you've talked to a lot of customers. I know that information is probably a little bit guarded, but do you have any other information that you can share with Casey on that one?
No, I think it's a great question and something, we are sort of actively doing analysis on with a number of customers to try to sort of get like really sort of statistically significant results. I can say, definitely anecdotally, we've found both examples of Qwilr customers who say our deals are closing faster because the buyers can move faster, as we saw by combining sort of pricing, signature, and proposal content all in one. And a number have said that actually like our contract size is going up since we started using Qwilr. So I don't think it's an across the board answer. I can say yes, absolutely. Every time you use interactive pricing, your prices will go up. But we have seen those examples, and we're trying to sort of find those like more specific trends of how you sort of see that happen. Good question.
Good deal. Okay. Jackie wrote in and asked for Ben and Chris, from your work with other SaaS companies, where do you see sales teams struggling the most?
So I'll take this first. We work with a lot of SDR teams, account teams that have account executives. And I think the biggest thing across the board that we find is that there's always an opportunity to do more active listening as a salesperson. I think a lot of times sales folks get really comfortable with this existing sales process that's been implemented at their business today. And they're just very used to running that same process. But the reality is that if you do better discovery and you take a more active listening role in what you're hearing from your potential buyers, that it may uncover or unlock additional pain points or value opportunities that you can communicate as a connection to the benefit of your tools. And that could either lead to faster deals, more deals that you actually win, or deals that are actually bigger, or all of the above. And active listening, I think, is a hard thing to do because folks are constantly trying to hit monthly goals, quarterly goals, and certainly annual revenue goals, and so they're just trying to get things done by the end of a specific deadline. But the more that folks can actually implement active listening in their sales strategy or their approach to doing sales, I think the better chance they have of hitting quotas and winning bigger deals.
Good. Chris, do you want to chime in?
I mean, I think certainly something I've seen in my personal experience and just like where a lot of the data is pointing to kind of generally industry is just sellers not getting enough time to sell. too much time being spent on administrative tasks that don't really move deals along, and trying to figure out like how can you free up some of that time so they can really sort of focus on the high value actions. And I think what we kind of continually see is where the real sort of magic is on the tool side is that integration with your CRM platform where so much data lives. And if you've got sort of good data hygiene, there's a lot to draft off of from that. And the sort of new category that Qwilr is inhabiting of proposal software, where your marketing team can really tee up sort of all the templates and sort of variations of the content you need to be sending out, and the tokens allowing sort of that data to pass through automatically from your CRM into your proposal software. So you really are taking off quite a bit of time on the sales team side for admin, and on the marketing team side, really just helping with version control, much higher degree of confidence that what is being sent out is the latest and greatest. But yeah, overall, I think just trying to reduce those sort of admin hours for more time selling is a big issue.
Great. Thank you. Good insights from both of you. Ben, Eduardo is asking, do you know what percentage of the study included enterprise size organizations?
I'm going to have to go back and look. I know that we were looking more towards the mid-market to enterprise groups. But we did certainly get some folks that were in the small business space. So I'll get that number offline.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, well, we are just coming up on 40 minutes here, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we are going to go ahead and close this up for today. And like I said, we will send out an email with links to preview this presentation again, or share it with your teams, as well as a link to the buyer experience study, the report itself, in case you want to learn more about the audiences that were surveyed and the respondents that participated. But thank you again for joining us today. Don't forget to complete that survey when you exit out. It helps us to create better content in the future. So thank you again. Have a wonderful day.